The war had been going on for so long that most beings in the galaxy had forgotten how it started. 12 years of death and destruction across 47 star systems. Two great alien races locked in a fight that neither could win, yet neither could stop. Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Crystal Spear. His body was made of living crystal, like all his people. When light hit him the right way, he sparkled like a diamond. But there was no beauty in his eyes now, only the tired look of someone who had seen too much death. The screens around him showed the latest battle reports. 3 million Vorthak warriors, dead in the past week alone. Their crystal bodies shattered by enemy weapons, their light forever dimmed. The numbers meant nothing anymore. They were just marks on a screen, another count in an endless tally of loss. "Sir, the enemy is regrouping near Sigma Prime," reported Commander Kixlon, his voice carrying the musical tone of their crystal speech. "They're bringing up more bioships from the breeding worlds." Zextar nodded slowly. The Netlian collective never seemed to run out of their living warships. Creatures grown in vast pools of genetic soup, bred only to fight and die. The Vorthak had learned to hate and respect these bioships in equal measure. They moved like living things because they were living things. They healed their wounds, adapted to new weapons, and fought with an intelligence that made them dangerous. "How many ships do we have left in fighting condition?" Zextar asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 47,000 combat vessels, sir. But half of them need major repairs. The crystal matrices are cracked, power cores damaged. We're running low on replacement parts." The Admiral turned to look out at the stars. Somewhere out there, across the void of space, the enemy was having the same conversation. The Netlian collective was dying just as slowly as the Vorthak Empire. Both sides were bleeding to death, drop by drop, battle by battle. On the other side of the war zone, in a ship that looked more like a giant jellyfish than a spacecraft, Collective Prime Velnosh felt the pain of her people. She was not one being, but many. Her consciousness spread across thousands of individual bodies that shared one mind. When her bioships died, she felt their death like losing part of herself. The latest reports flowing through her shared mind were no better than the Vorthak admirals. The breeding worlds could barely keep up with the losses. It took months to grow a new bioship, and the enemy was destroying them faster than they could be replaced. Her ship body pulsed with colors that showed her emotional state. Right now, she glowed deep purple, the color of exhaustion and despair. Around her, smaller versions of herself worked at living control panels that grew from the ship's walls like coral. "Prime, the crystal skins have pulled back from Sector 7, one of her smaller selves reported. The words came not through sound but through direct thought, shared across the collective mind. "Good. Pull our forces back too. Let the dead worlds rest." Velnosh's thoughts carried the weight of infinite sadness. So many worlds had been turned into lifeless rocks by this war. Planets that once bloomed with life now hung in space like gray skulls, their surfaces scarred by weapons that could crack continents. She remembered when this war began. A simple dispute over mining rights in a system that contained rare crystals needed by both species. The Vorthak needed them to grow their crystal technology. The Netlians needed them to enhance their bioships. Neither side would back down. Both claimed the system belonged to them. The first battle had been small, a few ships on each side trying to scare the other away. But when the first shots were fired, pride took over. Each side called for more ships. Each loss demanded revenge. What started as a border dispute became a war for survival. Now, 12 years later, neither side remembered what they were really fighting for. The crystal system that started it all had been destroyed in the third year of the war, blown apart by a Vorthak doomsday weapon. But the fighting went on. The Vorthak Empire had once been the jewel of this part of the galaxy. Their crystal cities caught starlight and turned it into beautiful patterns that could be seen from orbit. Their technology was elegant, graceful, built to last for thousands of years. But war had changed them. Their cities were now fortresses. Their crystal gardens had been turned into weapon factories. The Netlian collective had been explorers and healers. Their bioships traveled between worlds, sharing knowledge and helping other species solve problems with genetic engineering. They could grow living buildings, create new forms of life, heal diseases that other races thought impossible to cure. But war had made them into creators of death instead of life. Both sides had allies, smaller races that had been pulled into the conflict, but most of these allies were gone now, their worlds conquered or destroyed, their peoples scattered or extinct. The war had become a cancer that spread through the local group of stars, killing everything it touched. Captain Jake Morrison of the human research ship Aurora knew none of this history when his ship first detected the signs of the Great War. He was young for a ship captain, only 32 years old, with the kind of curious mind that made him perfect for deep space exploration. His mission was simple: map the far edges of the galaxy and look for new worlds that humans might visit someday. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange energy readings from the Kepler sector," reported his sensor officer, Lieutenant Amy Carter. She was good at her job, one of the best sensor operators in the human fleet. When she said something was strange, it usually meant something important. "What kind of readings?" Morrison asked, walking over to look at her screen. "Massive energy discharges, the kind you'd get from large-scale weapons fire, and lots of debris fields. I'm reading the remains of thousands of ships scattered across multiple star systems." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Kepler sector was supposed to be empty space, too far from Earth for humans to have visited before. If there were signs of a battle that big, it meant they had found their first evidence of advanced alien life. And that alien life was apparently very good at killing itself. "How recent are these readings?" he asked. "Hard to tell from this distance, sir, but some of the energy signatures are still hot. Whatever happened out there, it's probably still happening." Morrison made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Set course for the Kepler sector, maximum safe speed, and send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we may have found something big. The Aurora turned toward the distant flashes of light that marked the ongoing war. Its crew had no idea they were about to witness the final act of a conflict that had raged longer than some civilizations existed. They could not know that their arrival would be the beginning of the end for a war that had seemed endless. In the depths of space, the war continued. Ships died, warriors fell, worlds burned. The Vorthak and Netlians fought on, locked in their dance of mutual destruction, unaware that help was coming from an unexpected source. Neither side knew that somewhere, in the darkness between stars, a small human ship was racing toward them, carrying the seeds of a peace that would end their war in just 5 hours. The Aurora dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler sector, and Captain Jake Morrison felt his breath catch in his throat. The view on the main screen was like nothing he had ever seen before. Space itself seemed to be on fire. Massive explosions lit up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Streams of energy weapons crossed the void in brilliant colors. Blue crystal beams met green bioplasma in deadly light shows that could be seen across entire star systems. The debris fields were enormous, stretching for millions of kilometers in every direction. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Carter from her sensor station. "Captain, I'm reading over 10,000 active warships in this sector alone. And the debris, there must be the remains of 100,000 ships out there." Commander Roy Davis, the ship's strategic officer, was studying the tactical displays with growing amazement. "Sir, this is the largest space battle in recorded history. The energy output from these weapons could crack moons. How long has this been going on?" "According to the radiation decay patterns, at least a decade," Carter replied, her voice filled with awe and horror. "Maybe longer. The older debris fields show signs of battles from 12 years ago." Morrison felt the weight of what they were witnessing. 2 alien civilizations locked in a war that had been raging since before humans had even developed their first faster-than-light ships. The scale of destruction was beyond anything in human history. "Are we detecting any communication signals?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Multiple frequencies, but they're all encrypted, and they're not using any language patterns we recognize. These are definitely non-human signals." Morrison made his decision. "Send out a general communication on all frequencies. Standard first contact protocol. Let them know we're here, and that we come in peace." The response was immediate and violent. Both sides turned their weapons toward the small human ship. Energy beams that could destroy city-sized warships lanced out toward the Aurora. Only Morrison's quick thinking and his pilot's skill kept them from being vaporized in the first few seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Morrison shouted. "Get us out of range." The Aurora danced between the incoming fire, her small size and advanced engines keeping her just ahead of destruction. But the message was clear. Neither side welcomed visitors to their war. Admiral Zextar stared at the readings from his sensor array. A new ship had appeared in the battle zone, something his crystal-based sensors couldn't identify. It was small, much smaller than either Vorthak or Netlian warships, but it had moved with incredible speed and precision to avoid their weapons. "Unknown vessel," he broadcast on all frequencies, his crystal voice carrying the authority of command. "You are entering a restricted war zone. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." The response came back in a language he had never heard before, but his computer systems were already working to decode it. The patterns were strange, unlike anything in the Vorthak databases. This was definitely not a Netlian trick. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Aurora. We are explorers from the Sol system. We come in peace and request permission to establish communication." Zextar felt confusion ripple through his crystal matrix. Earth? Sol system? These names meant nothing to him, but the ship's behavior suggested these beings were not allied with the Netlians. Perhaps they could be useful. "Unknown vessel Aurora, you will accompany our ships to the crystal sphere for inspection. Any attempt to flee will result in your immediate destruction." On the other side of the battle zone, Collective Prime Velnosh was having similar thoughts. The new ship was clearly not Vorthak. Its smooth metal hull was completely different from their crystal constructions. But it might be a new weapon, a secret ally the crystal skins had been hiding. "Bioship Cluster 7 surround the unknown vessel," she commanded through the collective mind. "Bring it to the healing waters for examination. If it resists, dissolve." Captain Morrison found himself caught between two alien fleets, both demanding his surrender. His small crew looked to him for answers he didn't have. The Aurora was fast, but she was only one ship against thousands. Fighting was not an option. "Captain," said Lieutenant Carter, "I'm detecting massive ship movements on both sides. It looks like they're both trying to capture us. Or destroy us," added Commander Davis grimly. "Their weapons are charging up again." Morrison made a choice that would define first contact between humanity and these alien races. Open a channel to both fleets simultaneously. Let's see if we can talk our way out of this. The communication that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Three species, meeting for the first time in the middle of a war zone, trying to understand each other while weapons were pointed in every direction. Lieutenant Carter proved to be brilliant at languages. Within hours, she had worked out basic translation protocols with both alien races. The process was helped by the fact that both species had been intercepting each other's communications for years and had developed partial translation systems. Admiral Zextar was the first to agree to a meeting. His crystal pride demanded that he learn about these new beings before his enemies did. He ordered the Aurora to dock with the crystal spear under heavy guard. Morrison, Carter, and Davis were escorted through corridors that looked like the inside of a giant gem. Everything was made of living crystal that pulsed with its own light. The Vorthak warriors who guarded them were tall and elegant, their bodies catching and reflecting light in beautiful patterns. But there was nothing beautiful about Admiral Zextar's mood when they met him in his command chamber. The alien leader towered over the humans, his crystal body blazing with angry red light. "You claim to be neutral," he said, his voice like chimes in a windstorm. "But you appeared at the same time as a major Netlian assault. Explain this coincidence." "Commander." Davis stepped forward, his strategic mind already working on the problem. "Admiral, we detected signs of large-scale combat from several star systems away. We came to investigate, not to join your war. We had no idea you existed until today." "Impossible. The Netlians must have summoned you. They are known for their biological experiments. Perhaps you are one of their creations designed to look like a new species." Lieutenant Carter tried a different approach. Admiral, we can prove we're not allied with your enemies. We don't even know what your war is about. Perhaps you could explain it to us. For the first time, Zextar seemed uncertain. The question was so simple, yet he found himself struggling to answer it. What was the war about? It had been going on so long that the original reasons seemed lost in the endless cycle of attack and revenge. The Netlians are a plague, he said finally. They spread their biological contamination across the galaxy, destroying the natural order. They must be stopped. The humans exchanged glances. This sounded like the kind of propaganda that developed during long wars, when both sides demonized each other to justify continued fighting. Meanwhile, Collective Prime Velnosh was demanding her own meeting with the humans. Unlike the Vorthak, she came to them, her bioship extending a living tunnel that connected to the Aurora's airlock. The experience of walking through a living ship was unsettling for the human crew. Velnosh herself was even more alien than Zextar. She appeared as a constantly shifting mass of biological matter, sometimes looking almost human, sometimes resembling a sea creature, sometimes becoming something completely abstract. Her thoughts spoke directly into their minds rather than through their ears. You are not crystal skins, she observed, her mental voice carrying notes of curiosity and suspicion. Yet you are not of the collective. What manner of life are you? We're humans, Morrison explained. We come from a world called Earth. We're explorers, trying to learn about the galaxy and the life forms in it. The crystal skins destroy life. Wherever they go, Velnosh replied, her form shifting to show images of dead worlds. They turn living planets into sterile crystal gardens. They must be stopped before they spread their lifelessness to the rest of the galaxy. Again, the humans heard the same propaganda just from the other side. Both races had convinced themselves that they were fighting for the survival of life itself. Both believed the other side was an existential threat that had to be destroyed, completely. Over the next several days, the Aurora moved between both fleets under a temporary ceasefire that neither side quite trusted. The humans listened to stories of atrocities, learned about battles that had raged for years, and slowly began to understand the true scope of the tragedy they had stumbled into. Both races were dying. Both had lost billions of their people. Both had seen their homeworlds damaged by the war effort, yet neither could imagine a way to stop fighting without being destroyed by their enemies. Captain, Commander Davis said privately, I don't think either side can win this war. They're too evenly matched. They'll just keep fighting until they're both extinct. Then we have to find a way to stop them, Morrison replied. We can't just watch two entire civilizations destroy themselves. But stopping a war between races that had been fighting for 12 years would not be easy. The humans were vastly outnumbered, their single ship insignificant against the massive fleets that filled the Kepler sector. Yet they had something neither alien race possessed. Captain Morrison's message reached Earth 3 days after the Aurora's first contact with the alien fleets. The quantum communication array carried his words across the vast distance between the Kepler sector and Sol system in a burst of encrypted data that would change human history. Fleet Admiral Helen Brooks read the report in her office high above the Pacific Ocean. The Earth Defense Command headquarters was built into the side of a mountain, its windows looking out over the blue waters that had given birth to humanity. Now those same humans had found themselves in the middle of an alien war that had been raging for over a decade. 12 years of continuous fighting, she said aloud, reading Morrison's words again. 2 entire civilizations locked in mutual destruction. Millions of ships destroyed. Billions of casualties. General Frank Collins, head of Terran military operations, sat across from her desk. He was a big man with gray hair and scars from humanity's own wars. Those conflicts seemed small now compared to what Morrison had described. What's our response, Admiral? Collins asked. Morrison is requesting immediate backup, but he's also asking for permission to attempt mediation. That's a hell of a risk. Brooks stood and walked to the window. Earth looked so peaceful from up here. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents where billions of humans lived their lives without knowing that alien civilizations were destroying themselves in the darkness between stars. Frank, what would happen if we just pulled Morrison out and pretended we never found them? Collins considered the question carefully. In the short term, nothing. We could classify the whole thing and go back to exploring empty systems. But Admiral, wars like this don't stay contained. Eventually, one side will win or both sides will collapse. Either way, we'll have hostile aliens or desperate refugees on our borders. And if we get involved, then we're risking our first contact with alien life on a military intervention. If we fail, we make enemies of whoever survives. If we succeed, Collins paused, thinking through the implications. If we succeed, we become the power that ended the biggest war in galactic history. Brooks called an emergency meeting of the Terran Defense Council. Within hours, the most important people in human space were gathered in the secure conference room. Scientists, military leaders, diplomats, and politicians, all trying to understand what Morrison had found. Dr. Lisa Palmer, the Defense Council's chief xenobiologist, was fascinated by the descriptions of both alien races. The Vorthak are silicon-based life forms with crystalline bodies. They think in terms of structure, order, and hierarchy. The Netlians are carbon-based but completely communal, sharing consciousness across multiple bodies. These are two completely different ways of thinking about existence, which means they probably can't understand each other at all, added Dr. Carl Bennett, the Council's expert on alien psychology. Each species thinks the other is fundamentally wrong about how life should work. That's why this war has gone on so long. It's not just about territory or resources. It's about whose way of life gets to survive. General Collins presented his military analysis. According to Morrison's reports, both fleets are using tactics that haven't changed in years. They're stuck in patterns, unable to adapt because they've been fighting the same enemy for so long. They've forgotten how to think outside their own strategies. The debate went on for hours. Some council members argued for non-interference, believing humanity should avoid getting involved in alien conflicts. Others pushed for immediate military support, worried that failing to act would make humans look weak to potential alien neighbors. But it was Admiral Brooks who proposed the solution that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. We're not going to fight their war for them, she announced. We're going to end their war entirely. One decisive action that makes continued fighting impossible. The plan she outlined was audacious. Human stealth technology was years ahead of anything the aliens possessed. Their sensors couldn't detect human ships when they didn't want to be found. Their weapons couldn't target what they couldn't see. We hit both fleets simultaneously, Brooks explained. Disable their command structures, their weapons, their communications, make it impossible for them to continue fighting. Then we offer ourselves as mediators. Colonel Steve Wright, commander of the stealth ship program, studied the tactical data Morrison had transmitted. It could work. Our ships are smaller and faster than anything they have. We could get close enough to use electromagnetic pulse. Weapons disable their systems without killing their crews. How many ships would we need? Collins asked. 50 stealth frigates should be enough to hit all their major assets simultaneously. The key is coordination. We have to strike everywhere at once, or they'll adapt and start hunting our ships, Dr. Shaw. Palmer raised an important concern. What if they see this as an attack? We could end up fighting both sides instead of stopping their war. That's why we need Morrison to prepare them, Brooks replied. He's already established communication with both sides. He can warn them that we're going to demonstrate our capabilities, that this is about ending the war, not conquering anyone. The Council voted to approve Operation Peacemaker. Within hours, the largest military mobilization in human history began. 50 of humanity's most advanced warships prepared for a journey to the Kepler sector. Their crews were the best of the best, trained for missions that required perfect precision and split-second timing. Commander Tony Martinez was selected to lead the operation. He was young for such a responsibility, only 28 years old, but he had commanded more successful stealth missions than anyone else in the human fleet. His ship, the Phantom, would coordinate the entire operation. Lieutenant Beth Sanders, his tactical officer, spent days studying the alien ship designs Morrison had transmitted. The Vorthak ships are built like crystals, she explained to her crew. They have central power cores that feed energy through geometric patterns. If we can disrupt those patterns, the whole ship goes dark. Sergeant Dan Murphy, the Phantom Systems Specialist, was fascinated by the Netlian bioships. They're alive, which means they have nervous systems. Sonic disruptors should be able to scramble their neural networks without permanent damage. Dr. Carl Bennett joined the mission as xenological advisor. His job was to monitor both species' psychological responses during the operation, making sure the demonstration remained intimidating rather than traumatic. The fleet departed Earth on a Tuesday morning, their departure hidden from the public and most of the government. As far as most humans knew, it was just another routine patrol mission. Only a few dozen people in the entire solar system knew that humanity was about to intervene in an alien war. Back in the Kepler sector, Captain Morrison received his orders with a mixture of relief and terror. He was to inform both alien commanders that humanity would be demonstrating their military capabilities in 48 hours. The demonstration would be non-lethal, but comprehensive. All weapons and propulsion systems on both fleets would be temporarily disabled. Admiral Zextar's reaction was explosive. His crystal body blazed with angry light when Morrison delivered the message aboard the Crystal Spear. "You dare to threaten the Vorthak Empire?" He roared, his voice like breaking glass. "We have fought the Netlian plague for 12 years. We will not be stopped by a handful of metal ships from an unknown world." "Admiral, we're not threatening you," Morrison replied calmly. "We're offering to end this war. Both your fleets are dying. Both your civilizations are bleeding to death. We can stop the killing. By making us weak before our enemies? Never. The Vorthak do not surrender." Morrison tried a different approach. "What if I told you we could disable the entire Netlian fleet in less than 6 hours? Every bioship, every command center, every weapon, would that interest you?" Zextar's anger flickered with curiosity. "Impossible. The collective has millions of ships spread across dozens of systems. Admiral, you've seen our ship move. You know we have technology you don't understand. Trust me when I say we can do what we claim." Collective Prime Velnash's response was more thoughtful but equally skeptical. Her bioship pulsed with colors that showed deep consideration mixed with suspicion. "You offer to end a war that has lasted longer than some species exist," her thoughts whispered in Morrison's mind. "But war is not ended by demonstrations. War is ended by the death of one side or the other." "Not always," Morrison replied. "Sometimes war is ended by showing both sides that continuing to fight will only lead to mutual destruction. Sometimes peace comes from exhaustion, not victory. The crystal skins will never accept peace while they live. They seek to turn all life into their sterile perfection. They must be stopped. And they say the same thing about you. Both sides think the other is an existential threat. But what if you're both wrong? What if you could coexist?" The conversations went on for hours, Morrison moving between both fleets, trying to prepare two alien civilizations for humanity's intervention. Neither side fully believed that the small human fleet could do what they claimed. Both were about to learn that humanity had tricks neither of them could imagine. Commander Martinez and his stealth fleet were already moving into position around the Kepler sector. At exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, Terran Standard Time, Commander Tony Martinez gave the order that would end the longest war in galactic history. "All units, this is Phantom Leader. Operation Peacemaker is now active. Begin your runs." Across 47 star systems, 50 human stealth ships received the signal and moved toward their targets. They had been invisible to alien sensors for hours, drifting like ghosts through the debris fields and battle zones where two civilizations had been destroying each other for 12 years. Martinez watched his tactical display as the first wave of attacks began. Each green dot on his screen represented a human ship moving into position. Each red dot was an alien warship that was about to learn what human military technology could do. The Phantom itself was targeting the Crystal Spear, Admiral Zextar's flagship. Martinez had studied the massive Vorthak warship for days, memorizing every detail of its crystal structure. The ship was beautiful in its own way, like a giant diamond that caught and reflected the light of nearby stars, but beauty wouldn't save it from what was coming. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Beth Sanders from her weapons station. Crystal matrix patterns mapped and analyzed. EMP charges are ready. Dr. Bennett, are you monitoring their communications? Martinez asked. Yes, sir. The Vorthak fleet is preparing for what they think will be another normal battle with the Netlians. They have no idea we're here. Martinez felt a moment of doubt. In the next few minutes, they would attack beings who had shown them hospitality, who had trusted them enough to allow meetings aboard their ships. But those same beings had been trapped in a war that was killing both their species. Sometimes friendship meant doing things that seemed cruel. Fire when ready, he ordered. The Phantom's electromagnetic pulse weapons were invisible, silent, and completely devastating to crystal-based technology. The energy wave hit the crystal spear's central power core and spread through the ship's geometric patterns like lightning through a crystal web. Every system on the massive warship went dark in seconds. Admiral Zextar felt his ship die around him. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting strange shadows through corridors that had never known darkness. His crystal body dimmed as the ship's power grid failed, leaving him standing in the command center of what was now essentially a very large piece of floating rock. "Report," he commanded, but his communications were dead. The screens that usually showed him the status of his fleet were black. The crystal spear, pride of the Vorthak Empire, had been reduced to a powerless hulk. Around him, similar scenes were playing out across the Vorthak fleet. Ship after ship went dark as human stealth vessels delivered precisely targeted EMP strikes. The weapons were calibrated perfectly, strong enough to disable all systems, gentle enough to avoid harming the crystal beings inside. Commander Kixlon managed to activate a backup communication system, his voice crackling through static. "Sir, the entire fleet is reporting system failures. Weapons offline, engines offline, sensors offline. It's like something drained all the power from our ships simultaneously." On the other side of the battle zone, the Netlian collective was experiencing their own version of technological nightmare. But where the Vorthak ships simply went dark, the bioships of the collective began to convulse and writhe as sonic disruptors scrambled their nervous systems. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake, piloting the stealth ship Shadow, watched through her periscope as the massive Netlian bioship she had targeted began to twist in space like a creature in pain. The sonic weapons weren't hurting the living vessel, but they were disrupting the neural connections that allowed the collective to control it. "Target neutralized," she reported. "Bioship is alive but unresponsive to commands." Across the Netlian fleet, the same scene repeated hundreds of times. Ships that had moved with living grace suddenly became still, floating in space like sleeping whales. Their crews were unharmed, but the ships themselves were temporarily cut off from the collective mind that gave them purpose. Collective Prime Velnosh felt the attacks like losing pieces of herself. One by one, her bioships went silent in her mind. The shared consciousness that connected her to thousands of vessels across dozens of star systems began to fracture and break apart. For the first time in her species' history, she was alone in her own thoughts. "What is happening?" she called out. But there was no collective mind to answer her. Her own bioship, the Healing Waters, was still functional, but it was one voice crying in a wilderness where there should have been thousands. The third hour of the operation saw human forces moving beyond just disabling ships. Teams led by specialists like Sergeant Dan Murphy began targeting communication arrays, sensor networks, and command bunkers on asteroid bases and orbital stations. Murphy's target was a Vorthak communication hub built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The station coordinated fleet movements across 3 star systems, making it a crucial target for the operation. His team moved through the station's crystal corridors like shadows, planting EMP charges at key junction points. "Charges set," Murphy reported to his team leader. "Detonation in 30 seconds. The explosion wasn't visible from outside the asteroid, but inside, every piece of crystal technology went dead simultaneously. The communication hub that had been the nerve center for part of the Vorthak war effort became a dark, silent tomb of dead machines. Similar operations were happening throughout Netlian space. Dr. Carl Bennett, monitoring alien communications from aboard the Phantom, watched as confusion and panic spread through both fleets. "Commander, Both sides are completely bewildered, he reported. The Vorthak think this is some kind of new Netlian weapon. The Netlians think the Vorthak have developed technology they didn't know about. Neither side realizes this is coming from us. Martinez nodded. That was exactly what they had hoped for. By remaining invisible and attacking both sides equally, the humans had avoided being seen as allied with either faction. They were a third force, unknown and apparently unstoppable. By the 4th hour, both alien fleets were completely neutralized. Thousands of warships drifted powerless through space. Communication networks that had carried orders for 12 years of war were silent. Weapons that could crack planets were as useless as broken toys. Captain Morrison, watching from the Aurora, felt a mixture of awe and sadness as he witnessed the end of the Great War. The fleets that had fought each other for so long now floated helplessly, unable to continue their deadly dance. "Captain," Lieutenant Amy Carter said softly, "I'm detecting massive power signatures approaching from hyperspace." Morrison smiled. That would be Admiral Brooks. The human dreadnought Liberty dropped out of faster-than-light travel with an escort of heavy cruisers. The ship was massive by human standards, though still smaller than the largest alien vessels. But size didn't matter when every alien ship in the sector was dead in the water. Admiral Helen Brooks had timed her arrival perfectly. As the 5th hour of Operation Peacemaker ended, she broadcast a message on all frequencies to both alien fleets. "This is Admiral Helen Brooks of the Terran Defense Fleet. As you have just witnessed, human forces have successfully disabled your ability to continue this war. We are now offering ourselves as neutral mediators to negotiate a permanent peace settlement." The silence that followed was deafening. Across 47 star systems, millions of alien warriors sat in darkened ships, trying to understand what had just happened to them. The war that had defined their lives for over a decade had been ended by creatures they had barely known existed. Admiral Zexitar was the first to respond, his backup communicator crackling with static and disbelief. You did this? Your small fleet destroyed both our armadas?" "We disabled them," Brooks corrected. "Every ship, every weapon, every command center. But we didn't kill anyone. This was a demonstration, Admiral. We wanted to show both sides what continued fighting would cost you." Collective Prime Velnash's response came through an emergency biocommunicator, her thoughts heavy with shock. "Impossible. We had millions of ships. How could so few beings accomplish what neither the Empire nor the Collective could do?" "By thinking differently," Brooks replied. "By using strategies and technologies that neither of your species developed. You've been fighting each other for so long that you forgot there might be other ways to wage war." Commander Martinez listened to the exchanges as he guided the Phantom toward the Liberty. Around him, his crew was checking systems and preparing damage reports. The operation had been flawless. Not a single human casualty, not a single alien death, and complete mission success. "Sir?" Lieutenant Sanders said with wonder in her voice. "We just ended a 12-year war in 5 hours." Martinez nodded, but he knew the hard work was just beginning. Ending the fighting had been the easy part. Now they had to build a peace that would last, convince two species that had been trying to destroy each other that they could learn to coexist. But for now, the guns were silent. For the first time in 12 years, no weapons fired in the Kepler sector. No ships died, no warriors fell, no worlds burned. The war was over. Admiral Brooks prepared to dock with both alien flagships for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Behind her, the meeting that would decide the fate of two civilizations took place aboard the Liberty in Admiral Brooks's main conference room. For the first time in over 12 years, Admiral Zexitar and Collective Prime Velnash sat at the same table without, weapons pointed at each other. The room itself was designed to be neutral. Human engineers had removed anything that might seem threatening to either alien species. Soft lighting replaced the harsh glare of military vessels. The table was round, with no head position that might suggest superiority. Even the air was carefully filtered to be comfortable for both crystal and biological life forms. Admiral Zextar sat stiffly, his crystal body dim with exhaustion and defeat. His proud fleet, the greatest military force the Vorthak Empire had ever assembled, now drifted powerless in space. 12 years of war had ended not with glorious victory, but with complete humiliation. Across from him, Collective Prime Velnosh appeared as a shifting mass of biological matter, her form constantly changing as she struggled to maintain control without her connection to the collective mind. For a being used to sharing consciousness with millions of others, the isolation was almost unbearable. Admiral Brooks sat between them, flanked by Captain Morrison and Commander Davis. Dr. Bennett was present to monitor the psychological state of both alien leaders, while Lieutenant Carter stood ready to translate any communication difficulties. "Gentlemen and lady," Brooks began, her voice calm and professional, "we are here because your war was killing both your species. In another year, maybe two, there would have been nothing left of either the Vorthak Empire or the Netlian Collective except dead worlds and empty space. You had no right to interfere," Zextar said, his voice like grinding crystal. "The Vorthak do not ask for help from aliens. We fight our own battles. And look where that fighting has brought you." Morrison replied, "Admiral, your homeworlds are running out of resources. Your population is dying faster than it can reproduce. Your technology is failing because you've converted all your manufacturing to weapons production." Velnosh's form rippled with dark colors. "The crystal skins speak of rights while they poison the galaxy with their sterile perfection. They cannot be trusted to keep any agreement." "And she says the same thing about you," Davis interjected. "Both sides think the other is evil. Both sides think they're fighting for survival. But you're both wrong." Brooks activated a holographic display that showed the Kepler sector before the war began. Green dots marked thriving worlds, blue lines showed trade routes, and golden areas indicated peaceful space where both species had lived without conflict. "This is what your sector looked like 15 years ago," she explained. "Both your civilizations were exploring, building, creating new things. You traded with each other. Your young people visited each other's worlds. There was no great hatred between you." The display changed, showing the progression of the war year by year. Green dots turned red as worlds were destroyed. Blue trade. Routes vanished. The golden areas of peace shrank until only 2 small regions remained, the core worlds of each empire. "And this is what 12 years of war has accomplished," Brooks continued. "You've destroyed almost everything your ancestors built. You've turned a thriving region of space into a graveyard." Zextar stared at the display, seeing his empire's decline mapped out in brutal detail. "The Netlians started this war. They attacked our mining operation in the Sigma system, because you were stealing crystals from worlds we had seeded with life," Velnosh responded, her form flashing angry red. "Those worlds were our children. You turned them into dead rock. We needed those crystals to grow our cities. The worlds were already barren when we found them. They were not barren, they were just beginning to bloom." Brooks held up her hand for silence. "It doesn't matter who started it. What matters is that continuing it will destroy you both." She changed the display again, this time showing projections of what would happen if the war continued. Both empires, populations dropping toward zero, their fleets shrinking every year, their homeworlds gradually becoming uninhabitable as resources were exhausted. Our computer models show that if fighting resumed today, the Vorthak Empire would collapse completely. Within 18 months, the Netlian Collective would last perhaps 6 months longer, but only because biological systems take longer to completely break down. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of truth. Both alien leaders had known their civilizations were dying, but seeing it laid out so clearly made the reality impossible to ignore. Commander Davis spread out detailed economic projections across the table. "But there's another possibility. Our analysis shows that working together, you could rebuild everything you've lost within a generation. The Vorthak crystal technology combined with Netlian biological engineering could restore the dead worlds, reopen the trade routes, and create something better than what existed before the war." "Impossible," Zextar said immediately. "Vorthak technology and Netlian biosystems are completely incompatible." "Are they?" Dr. Bennett asked. pulling up research data on his portable screen. "Admiral, your crystal matrices are excellent at storing and focusing energy, but they need biological neural networks to achieve true intelligence. That's why your ships need Vorthak crew members to operate effectively." He turned to Velnosh. "And Prime, your bioships are incredibly adaptable and self-repairing, but they're vulnerable to energy weapons because biological tissue can't disperse concentrated power efficiently. Crystal matrices could solve that problem." Lieutenant Carter spoke up, her voice excited with possibility. "During our analysis of both your technologies, we found dozens of areas where cooperation could benefit both species. Vorthak crystal gardens could provide perfect growing environments for Netlian bioforms. Netlian healing techniques could repair damaged crystal matrices." Brooks activated another display, this one showing a theoretical joint colony. Crystal structures rose from the ground like trees, but they were alive with Netlian biomatter flowing through them. The buildings could grow and adapt while remaining stable and permanent. "This is what we think you could build together," she explained. "Cities that combine the best of both your species, worlds that are both structured and alive." For the first time since the meeting began, both alien leaders showed something other than hostility. Zextar's crystal body began to glow with a faint light as he studied the projected city. Velnosh's form shifted to brighter colors, her biological curiosity overcoming her anger. "Even if such cooperation were possible," Velnosh said slowly, "there is too much hatred between our peoples. Too many deaths, too much pain. How could we ask our survivors to work with those who killed their families?" Morrison leaned forward. "By giving them something better to work toward than revenge. Prime, how many of your people remember what life was like before the war?" "The young ones remember nothing else. They were born into war. They know only fighting and dying. And Admiral, what do your young warriors dream of?" Zextar considered the question. "Victory. Honor. An end to the killing so they can build families and grow crystal gardens. Then give them that," Brooks said simply. "Not through destroying their enemies, but through making those enemies into allies." The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both alien leaders returned to their disabled fleets to consult with their surviving commanders and civilian leaders. The debates were fierce, with many on both sides arguing for continued war despite their weakened condition. But gradually practical necessity overcame emotional hatred. The Vorthak military leaders admitted that their fleets could not continue fighting for more than a few months. The Netlian collective minds acknowledged that their bioships were dying faster than they could be replaced. On the 4th day, Admiral Zexitar and Collective Prime Velnosh returned to the Liberty. This time, they brought with them the formal surrender documents of both their fleets and the authority to negotiate on behalf of their governments. The peace treaty they signed was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of one side surrendering to the other, both sides agreed to surrender to humanity as neutral mediators. Human forces would oversee the demobilization of both fleets, the restoration of damaged worlds, and the gradual integration of both societies. Most importantly, humanity would establish permanent monitoring stations throughout the Kepler sector to prevent any resumption of hostilities. Both species agreed to submit future disputes to human arbitration rather than settling them through warfare. 6 months later, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the human base orbiting the restored world of New Harmony. Below him, the first joint Vorthak Netlian colony was taking shape. Crystal towers reached toward the sky, but they pulsed with biological life. Gardens grew in geometric patterns that pleased Vorthak sensibilities while supporting Netlian ecosystems. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still arguments, still moments when old hatreds flared up. But children of both species played together in the crystal gardens, and their parents worked side by side to build something neither could have created alone. "Captain," Lieutenant Carter said, joining him at the observation window, "we just received word from Earth. The Defense Council wants to know if you think this peace will last."